Gordon. Next up, Ms. Vanderbilt.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here to answer our questions. I'd like to go to something that you told the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee when you said that where you really drew the line, one of the things that caused you to blow the whistle on this was because they were starting to engage in voter suppression, particularly targeting people based on their race. And I'd like to just, if you could explain what it is exactly when you're talking about voter suppression, what is it that they were proposing or did do?
So, to be clear, I didn't work on voter suppression projects. I was made aware of them whilst I was there. My understanding of what the company was intending to do, I believe at the instigation of Steve Bannon and some of his colleagues in different PACs, was to create lists of predominantly African-American voters and then look at what types of messaging would disengage them from politics further, which would then reduce the likelihood that they would vote. So there's different definitions of voter suppression. The most egregious form would be to actually go and try to deregister people to vote, or what's called vote caging. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is finding things that will make politics so unappetizing or confusing to a subset of voters that they become less inclined to actually vote or engage with the democratic process.
And this is based on these psychosocial behavioral profiles that are gathered from, I mean, as you mentioned, not just Facebook, but potentially private companies, potentially from different sources, browsing histories, things like that. There's this aggregate of data that is being collected that's allowing this kind of work?
Yes. So the data would be sourced from multiple origins. Some of it was commercial, some of it was electoral, and some of it was social or online.
So one of the things that you just told us is that the intellectual property of aggregate IQ, so a lot of this data that's being collected, that aggregated, is actually exclusively owned by SCL. There's a data sharing arrangement. But when Mr. Vickery was here, was testifying before the committee, he said a similar thing. He said that he found on the servers of AIQ data where the code base looked like it was exactly the same. So suggesting again that SCL and Aggregate IQ were sharing their data completely. And yet when we had Mr. Sylvester here, he said that all they had access to was potentially some ranking scores that came from the US that might have come from an SCL server somewhere. So you're saying that what Mr. Sylvester told us is not accurate, that in fact there was a much closer arrangement between SCL and AIQ?
So in order for the technologies that AIQ were developing to work, right? So what they built was the interface between databases and online platforms that you could put advertising on. So they were that sort of middle ground. You need to have access to the data in order to pull lists, in order to then send it to create a custom audience. So you can't build a targeting platform that doesn't have access to data, because then what are you targeting on, right? So one of the things that I provided to the DCMS committee here in Britain is an email from AIQ that specifically references searching the SCL databases on the Ripon project. So I don't know how else you can query a database if you don't have access to the database. I do not know how you can perform targeting if you do not have access to the database. So I do not, and frankly, I'm surprised and really disappointed that Jeff Sylvester and Zach Massingham have decided to try to obfuscate or hide what happened. And you'll have to ask them why it is that they are taking this line. But in my view, that's just not true. What value would they offer then if they did not use any of the data?
And actually, that's my next question, is when people are engaging SCL or Cambridge Analytica or Aggregate IQ, when particularly for elections, what are they buying? Because what we were led to believe through Aggregate IQ is that it's like a Burma shave. You know, you just put a little thing on Facebook, and they were just the ones that put the ads based on some demographic data on Facebook. And if somebody, you know, waves at you on the street, or the same thing as putting a like, they were just gathering that, and that was all they were doing. But £600,000 for a single contract, just so that someone can go and target some people on Facebook, which most people, any volunteer could probably do. You're suggesting that what they were really buying was access to this aggregated database, this psychosocial profiling, the vast amount of data that was collected. That's what people were buying into.
So, with respect to, I appreciate your very, very Canadian political term, Burma shave. I haven't heard that in a long time, actually. You know, the thing that I find farcical about the line that you know, all Aggregate IQ does is just, you know, click some demographics on Facebook Ad Manager and that's it. Well, the problem that I have with that is that I'm like, well, what is the value of your company then? All you're doing is something that an intern could do, right? If you know that you want to target, you know, women between 25 and 30, you can tell your intern to go and do that. So I don't understand why you would need, it would be a lot cheaper also, because you wouldn't have to be paying for all the consultancy fees. So to me, that's just farcical as an explanation, unless they are grossly incompetent or you know, I don't know that if Vote Leave was just that stupid, but having met Dom Cummings, I don't think he is. And so I find that really, really hard to believe. You know, and one of the things that, you know, Facebook has gone out and confirmed is that actually a lot of these different campaigns were all using the same custom audiences for targeting. So it's like, I don't understand that explanation, and I can't speak for them, but for me, I don't buy it.
Thank you, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Next up for 5 minutes.